Welcome back to Talking Sports with Brandon. This is Week 15 NFL recap video. I say it every video, but if you didn't check out the previous video to this, which was the Week 15 preview video, then definitely check that out because you'll see the picks that I made, the games that we talked about, what I wanted to see, what possibly could have happened in this week, and it was definitely a crazy week this week. So a lot of things happened in terms of playoffs, just crazy games that happened. I said we had our first Saturday games of the season, and they definitely, two of them lived up to the hype. I would say one of them definitely did not, but they were still exciting. We'll talk about them, but definitely a good week of football for, like I said, exciting finishes, dramatic things that were happening in games, things I've never seen before in an NFL game. Actually, I guess two games I've never seen before. I guess really no one else has seen before, but yeah, a lot of crazy things, and we're definitely going to talk about them. So we're going to start with the five picks, as we always do. Again, just not a great week. 2-3, not bad, not great, but we needed to go over 500 this week. Didn't happen. I said I didn't really love a lot of games, and I kind of just went with some teams that, certain matchups, certain teams where it's like, I'm trying to go with them because they're either the best team or the second best team in their conference, and I just have faith in them playing an inferior opponent. And what do you know, those two games didn't hit. But we'll start with the first game, which I thought would play out a little bit differently than it did. So it was Dolphins-Bills. I had the Bills -7, and that was the Saturday night game. It was supposed to be snowing from when the game started to the end of the game. Snow, wind, cold, everything. It was cold. I guess it was a little windy, not that windy, but the snow didn't happen until I guess around somewhere in the fourth quarter. It happened. The snow started coming down, and you saw it only took like maybe 5-10 real minutes for the field to go from completely normal, just green grass, to snow on it. Not like a ton of snow, but definitely covered in white. But I thought it would be snow from the start, and that's what it was supposed to be. That's what everyone thought it was supposed to be. It was snowing the night before. It was snowing earlier that day, and it just stopped as soon as the game started, which again wasn't expected. But so again, I was expecting that, and that led me to go to the conclusion that the Bills' run game is better than the Dolphins' run game, despite their actual running backs. The Bills not doing much. They have Josh Allen, and that's what I went with. I said they'd run the ball. They know how to play in the cold, so they can still throw the ball, and you still do have Josh Allen, who's obviously a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. So I didn't think it'd be that big of a deal, to be honest, dealing with the weather. And I didn't think they'd blow them out. I thought it'd be a close game, but they would still be able to beat them by more than a touchdown. Give credit to the Dolphins. I think that if the snow did happen at the start of the game, it'd be different. But even saying that, the run game was really good. I think they ran for 180 yards on the ground. Raheem Mostert, again, no Jeff Wilson this game. It was Raheem Mostert. He had a really good game. I think he had 140. 136 on 17 carries. So he was great. He had like a 70-yard run. He kept getting all these 15, 20-yard runs. So he had a great game. And that's really what helped their offense. I think that without that, this game plays differently, even without the weather and the snow. But and they did have two. They had one big bomb of a play, which is what their offense is. They want the Dolphins. They want to go big explosive plays, and it was a 67-yard touchdown pass to Waddle. But they played a really good game. I got to give them credit. I didn't think they'd play this well. Again, I think if the weather was different, it wouldn't be this close of a game. But it is what it is. They played a really good game. Despite them losing 32-29 to the Bills, you definitely got to look at it as a positive in terms of the way that they played, because the 2 weeks before that, they played awful. Tua was terrible. The team was terrible. This game, they were winning 29-21 in the fourth quarter. So you can honestly look at it and say they probably could have won that game. Allen led them on a touchdown drive to get the game 29-29, and then he led them to a game-winning field goal at the end of the game. So you possibly could have won this game, no doubt about it, but Tua played a lot better. He was still only 17 of 30, but he played better. He looked better. The run game, like I said, really helped for them, but Allen was just better. He was 304 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. He had 77 yards on the ground by himself, so he was basically just a one-man wrecking crew this entire game. And it really showed because he was just phenomenal. it's tough to beat a Bills team like that when he has a game like that. When he, doesn't, he did lose one fumble, but when he's playing at that high of a level, you got to be perfect on the offensive side of the ball. And they just hit a little bit of a rough patch after getting it to 29-21. Again, that was early in the fourth quarter. It was a field goal, so they just couldn't put any more points together. Had they done that, the game's probably a little bit different. But give credit to the Dolphins for the way they played, but they still did lose the game. So they're 8-6 now. Bills are 11-3. That division, what seemed like could have been close at one point, obviously now all wrapped up with them having a 3-game lead. They both split in the season series, obviously with 3 games left. You do not see the Bills losing all 3 and the Dolphins winning all 3. So the Bills will win that division, but and we'll see where the Dolphins go. I mean, they're the 7 seed now in the AFC, so they went from the potentially a 1 or 2 seed if they had won the division to a 5 seed to a 6 seed, now to a 7 seed. So I do believe they're better than a 7 seed. I think that's a scary matchup. Right now they play Kansas City. That's definitely not the team Kansas City would want to play in the first round. Not saying that they would struggle or lose to them, but you would rather face maybe a Ravens team, a Chargers, a Jets, someone like that, obviously, rather than a Dolphins team that clearly can, play with the big teams. I mean, they've beaten the Bills, they played them close in Buffalo. They can play the big teams and they can play them really close. But yes, that was the first game. We'll talk about the other Saturday games after the 5 picks, but that was the first game, so that was a loss, obviously. Second game, Lions-Jets. This one was perfect. This was a great pick. Lions, I had the -1. They ended up winning 20-17, so perfectly executed, to be honest. It was a battle, though. The Lions definitely struggled. The Jets defense played well. Still didn't really, I don't think they caused a turnover in this game, which has been the problem for the Jets defense, is that they're playing really well, but when your offense struggles, and I know Zach Wilson started this game. He actually wasn't terrible, but even with Mike White in there, it's not like they were putting up 30-plus points a game. They were still struggling to get points. They were still struggling to move the ball as well. And when they're not causing turnovers and giving your offense better field position, no matter how great you play on defense by limiting your opponent to less than 20 points, they're not putting long drives together, they're not doing a lot of things, it still takes a lot on your offense to go down the field and get points. And that's the problem, is that they're not creating those turnovers. I think they, maybe in the last 5 games, it's maybe like 1 or 2 turnovers, if that. That's not acceptable for the offense that you have. Now, that may be unfair to the defense, but with the way that their offense is, you got to be able to give them good field position. And right now, they're just not doing that. And like I said, Zach Wilson played this game. I didn't think he played terrible. It's not like his completion percentage was basically 50%, but he made some big throws when he had to. He had one terrible interception. He missed a couple guys who were open. That's probably expected with him, but he threw for 317 yards. He was hitting guys down the field. He had 2 touchdowns. Like, he was driving them. He was making plays. When it came down to the final drive of the game, he led them down the field for an opportunity to kick a game-tying field goal. They missed. It was 58 yards. They missed. It's a bad clock management, so that's kind of on the coaching staff, to be honest. But he did lead them down the field. I mean, he did enough to win you that game, but obviously they did lose 20-17. But so now they're both 7-7, but it's 2 different tales. It's the Jets have lost 3 straight games to go from 7-4 to 7-7, and then the Lions have just been on a run. I mean, they have 5 straight games I think they've won. Three straight games, but it's 6 of the last 7 games that they've won. So they are playing really good football. Some games are kind of easily winning these games, like the last 2, but this one they have to grind it out. The offense wasn't as spectacular as it's been. Again, you're going against a good defense, but still, no mistakes, no turnovers. You're going to definitely win games when you're not turning the ball over, or at least have a better chance at doing that. So the Lions are coming for that 7 seed, or maybe even the 6 seed, who knows, because the 6 and 7 seed are definitely close in terms of record and what possibly could be that final 2 spots for the NFC. But they're definitely better than Seattle. I think they're between the Giants and Washington. I think it's very close. I think you could say that they are better than either of those teams. But the way they're playing right now, the defense is playing way better as well. You got to give them a lot of credit for the way that they're playing. So that was the second game, first win. And then you go to the next two games where this is what I meant by just taking the two of the best teams in the league. They're playing against bad opponents, and you kind of just hope for the best. So we went Chiefs against the Texans, um, and it was in Houston. The line was 14 for the Chiefs. I knew it was a big line, and I knew it obviously could be tough, but I didn't think it was gonna be this tough. The Chiefs had to go to OT against the Texans and beat them 30-24. I didn't think it was going to be that hard. The Texans, they played a good game last week. There's no way a team that's 1-11-1 going into this game is going to repeat that type of performance, but they did. I mean, they really did. They played the Chiefs really well. I mean, you could argue that they could have won that game, if not for Mahomes having a really good game. He was 36 of 41, 336, two touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown as well. The Chiefs, I think they had two turnovers, I believe. Yeah, they lost two fumbles, so that's definitely what kept the Texans in the game. But that's what you need when you're a bad team. You need the better team to make just one or two mistakes that could give you a chance to stay alive, and that's what happened. But in the end, the Chiefs did pull away and get the win. Didn't cover it, though, so obviously it's a loss for me. But that would have definitely been an embarrassing loss for the Chiefs, because they're still fighting for that one seed in that bye. They're 11-3 with the Bills. Obviously, the Bills already beat the Chiefs, but if you do end up with one more win than the Bills, you got that bye, which is huge. You need that bye. And again, if you do happen to face Miami, if Miami stays as a 7 seed, which I don't see it happening, but let's say it does, or even I think LA is probably the next scariest team you'd have to play in terms of that 7 seed because of Herbert and the talent that they do have and what they can do in a one game situation. But let's say it's Miami. You don't want to play Miami in that first round. You just don't. So if you can get that bye, you got to get that bye. And the Chiefs, they have a pretty easy schedule. They play the Seahawks, Broncos, Raiders. That's a pretty easy schedule for them. So they should be able to go 3-0 the rest of the way. But if they played the way they did against Houston, then I don't know. That's going to be tough. The Bills, a little bit tougher. They play the Bears this week. I mean, that should be a win. But it's also the weather conditions for that are going to be crazy. So they should still be able to win that game, but who knows? That's definitely up in the air just a tiny bit because of the weather. It's supposed to be freezing cold, so snow. It's like that one's supposed to snow. We'll see if it happens like in the Bills-Dolphins game, but they play the Bears this week, and they play the Bengals. That's definitely the toughest game that they'll play. So if they win that game, then they'll most likely be on their way to that 1 seed, but that's the game to look out for. And then they play even the Patriots the last week. That could be tough as well. So their schedule is definitely tougher than the Chiefs in terms of trying to get to that 1 seed. So that's going to be something to look out for. Again, not this week, but next week in Week 17 when they play the Bengals, which obviously, the Bengals are that dark horse team in the AFC. And I guess actually because I'm talking about the Bengals, I'll skip on the other team that I picked and I'll go to the Bengals game. So when Bengals-Bucks, I picked Bengals -3.5. It was easy. I picked it. As soon as I saw it, I said it when we made the picks. How could I not choose it? At first, it didn't look great. This game was 17-0 Bucks at one point. Right before half, actually. The Bengals got a field goal right at the end of half to make it 17-3. And from that point on, the game was over. Not even close. The Bengals they went on a 31-0 scoring run. Which is kind of crazy considering the fact that the Bengals were doing nothing in the first half. And the Bucks, they weren't doing a lot, but they were doing just enough to, put points on the board and, go up 17-0. But from that point forward, the game was over. The Bucks got a late touchdown with 50 seconds left to get to 23. But they had 4 straight possessions with a turnover, the Bucks, in the second half. It was a fumble, or it was an interception, a fumble, and then an interception again. So that's kind of just the season that the Bucs are having. I mean, they can, whether they're getting just straight blown out, like last week against the 49ers, where they just are uncompetitive, or when they do have big plays, they get called back because of a penalty, or a drop happens on the throw when he's wide open, or it's a game like this where they actually look pretty decent, and they're putting up points, their defense is playing really well, and then for some reason they just fall apart, and basically this game turned into a blowout on the other side of the field. So Bengals moved to 10-4. Bucks are still in first place because the Panthers lost. So Bucks at 6-8, they're still in first. They play the Cardinals this week, then the Panthers, and that's going to be the game for the division most likely, unless the Bucks do win this week and the Panthers lose. It would still matter that game between them, but wouldn't be basically for the division. But yeah, the Bucks, whoever gets into the playoffs from that division. I mean, even the Saints are in it. The Saints won this week. The Saints are technically in that race because they have 5 wins now. It really doesn't make sense. It doesn't help that the Saints have lost to the Bucks twice, but if they were in a tie with the Panthers, then potentially you have a chance. But it's an embarrassing division. We've talked about it. It's kind of disgusting to actually keep talking about it. But yeah, whoever's going to win that division will host a playoff game, most likely against Dallas. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but. It's embarrassing that a team from that division is going to host a playoff game. That's what's going to happen. But that was the second win, I guess the second win of the week, the last win of the week. But then we'll move to the other game I was talking about. So Eagles-Bears, I had Eagles -9. Again, just picking the best team in the league. I still think it's the Bills, but obviously with the record and the way they're playing, it's the Eagles. But they're in Chicago. It could be tough. Chicago's coming off a bye. That definitely helps. You have some more preparation time. But the Eagles are the better team. But they played a weird game. Miles Sanders, who's a 1,000-yard rusher, having a really good season, had a great game last week against the Giants. You're playing one of the worst run defenses in the league in Chicago. He doesn't get his first carry until like halfway through the second quarter. He only finishes with like 10 carries in the game. Hurts has 2 interceptions. They played a really weird game against a very inferior Bears team. Just gave them better field position to get points. I mean, the Bears, they can't score points. Like, they make so many mistakes. They just shoot themselves in the foot 1,000 times a game that it's almost incredible that they can almost win a lot of these games because they probably should be winning most of these games. Like, the way that they, if you look at each one of their games, they make 1,000 mistakes, and if you just cut those in half, they probably win a lot of these games that they play. But again, that's why they're a 3-11 team. It's because of those mistakes. But Hurts actually gets injured in this game, and he we'll know more when I make the next episode because it will be closer to when because all the games are being played Saturday this week because it's Christmas Eve and then Christmas. There's a couple of games on Christmas, but just about every game is played on Saturday this week. But we'll know more if he's going to play against Dallas this week. But news came out yesterday that he hurt his shoulder in this game. He didn't finish this game. He didn't come out, but there was a play where he got knocked down and he stayed on the ground for a little bit. But he did finish it. But he might miss this week's game. Again, with Dallas lost, Eagles won. So with that happening, the game against Dallas isn't as important because now you're technically 2 games up on them. Or really, basically you have 3 more wins than them. So that game doesn't really matter as much in terms of winning that division. So you can rest them for that game. Even if you lose that game, you play the Saints and the Giants the last 2 weeks. He can return for one of those games if you need him to, but they have Gardner Minshew. They're also a really good team anyways. They should be able to beat the Saints and or the Giants to fully lock up that division and the 1 seed. So technically you could rest him for these next 3 games, and then get him, and then you have a bye, you get him ready for the playoffs. But if Dallas had won their game, I think that Jalen Hurts would most likely play in this game. They're still technically not ruling him out just yet. Again, it's only Tuesday, but I think if that game meant more and it was like, all right, if Dallas were to win this game, then they have a real shot at the division, I think Hurts would play. So I think it's definitely precautionary for reasons as to why he will potentially might not play this game. I don't think he will, but that's a decision that we won't ever know what's going to happen because if Dallas had won, then he'd go out there playing hurt, and you have to see if he would get hit on that shoulder, it's his throwing shoulder. If he gets hit on that shoulder again, they like to run with him a lot. What would happen? Would they have to limit the runs with him? Definitely big decisions would have had to been made if that game meant something. Again, with it not meaning anything now, I think it's the right decision not to play him because, again, you're most likely going to get the 1 seed anyways. Even with Minshew, he's a solid backup in there, and your system works for quarterbacks like him who can run, make throws when he has to. The defense plays really well, so it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, you're losing an MVP candidate and probably the favorite, but it's not the worst backup, not the worst plan to go forward with. So, that's I guess the biggest news from this week in terms of injury-related news. But In terms of that game, the Bears-Eagles game, I didn't say the final score, but the Eagles won 25-20, so obviously didn't cover that 9-point spread. Again, they really should have. They were easily the better team than the Bears. They just gave them opportunities. Again, similar to the Chiefs game, they had 2 turnovers, and the Eagles had 3 turnovers, so they lost the fumble as well. But the Chiefs had 2 turnovers, and you could just see they let bad teams in the game. It's gonna stay close, and you're not gonna cover a point spread like that. So we went 2-3. That puts our overall record now to 33, 39, and 3. A lot of threes, but not what you want. It's not what you want. With only now 3 weeks left, that's 15 games. To cover that 6 points, you gotta at least go. You basically got to go 4-1 and 3-2. You got to go 4-1 2 weeks and 3-2 the other week or something like that. So I guess that would do it. But to get over 500. So it's going to be a big ask. This season just hasn't been my season, it just hasn't. So we'll think about that in the next video. But in terms of the other games from this week, the one of the things that we've never seen before when I kind of did that in the opening was Colts-Vikings, the first game on Saturday, where the Colts go up 33-0 in this game. The score is 33-0 Colts. The Vikings the Colts get a pick six. They get a blocked punt for a touchdown. The Colts offense really isn't doing much. It's just that the Vikings offense wasn't doing anything, and they were giving them good field position. At one point, the average starting field position for the Colts was midfield, and for the Vikings, I think it was like the 22-yard line or something, obviously on their side. So when you give a team the ball at midfield, that means they only got to go 15 to 20 yards just to get a field goal. Even for how bad of an offense they are, and Jonathan Taylor did get injured in this game pretty early on, but they can move the ball 15, 20 yards. It's not that hard. You give him that type of field position, they're going to put up points. And it was 33-0 going into half. And then the comeback happens. The Vikings, they didn't look awful, but things just weren't working. No one was on the same page. It just wasn't connecting in that first half. Their defense is really bad. I mean, I know they only held them to 3 points in the second half, but the defense is really bad. Again, 2 of them technically wasn't their fault, and giving that type of field position, it's hard on the defense, but it's just not a good defense anyways. So a better defense would at least be able to stop them a tiny bit. Not saying they wouldn't give up at least 20 plus points, but their defense is really bad for the Vikings. But they get a touchdown to open the second half, let up another field goal, but then go touchdown, 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 touchdown. So went from 33-0, 33-7, 36-7, 36-14, 36-21, 36-28, 36-36 with 2 minutes 15 seconds left. And it came off a 64-yard screen pass to Dalvin Cook, and he just ran right through the defense for a touchdown. So and the Colts returned the ball over. The Vikings had 2 touchdowns overturned because they blew the play dead. One was in the first half, one was in the second half. Both strips from the Vikings defender, and the refs blew one stop of progress for Michael Pittman. The other one they called Jackson, the running back, down by contact. And they blew both plays dead, so they could have been. They would have both been touchdowns. I'm pretty sure they still scored on those drives. Maybe one of them they didn't. I think they threw an interception. Yeah, the Vikings even threw an interception in that comeback and still were able to tie the game. But they came all the way back, tied 36-36 in overtime. Came all the way down to the final seconds of overtime. It literally the last few seconds, the Vikings had it, they punted. Colts had it, they punted. But that gave the ball back to the Vikings with under 2 minutes. They get a 2-minute drill going, and they get a field goal from 40 yards. They make it. They win 39-36. Biggest comeback in NFL history. Only right, I guess, it happened to the Colts. It happened with the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings only play one-possession games. Everyone's calling them a fraud, which, again, even though they won this game, they're still a fraud. I mean, you're down 33-0 to the Colts at halftime at home. That's pretty embarrassing. I don't care that they came back and won the game. That's unbelievable, to be honest. But again, they did win the game. You got to at least give them credit for fighting back. They could have easily packed it in, down 33-0 at halftime at home. They didn't, though. Cousins had a monster game in terms of stats. But yeah, they moved to 11-3. Colts 4-9-1. And yeah, I mean, it was a huge game for the Vikings because the Niners had won on Thursday night, and the Niners are now 10-4. And the Vikings were 10-3 going into this game. Down 33-0, you're probably expecting that they lose this game. If they would have lost, I'm not sure how the tiebreaker would have worked, but they would be tied, at least for record, in terms of getting that number 2 seed. And the Niners probably would have ended up, if they were tied going into Week 16, I feel like the Niners probably would have ended up getting that number 2 seed. They are the better team, but a huge game that the Vikings won because now they stay a game up in that 2 seed, so they can at least afford to lose one. Not like they want to lose one, but technically they can afford to lose one and still be tied based on record. Again, I'm not sure exactly how the tiebreaker works between the two teams, but a huge win because you want to be that 2 seed. Obviously, you're a home team in every playoff game except for playing the 1 seed. That's exactly what you want. And it was just a huge, the Niners team, you had to be crushed after that. You see them down 33-0. You're expecting you're going to be at the same record at the end of this week, and all of a sudden the Vikings come back and win that game. So, crazy. That was craziness. Second crazy thing that happened this week was the Patriots-Raiders game. Saw it happening. And the Raiders are winning this game 17-3. They're in command of this game. The Patriots offense looked awful. They basically did all game, but Raiders are in total command of this game. Patriots come all the way back. They get a pick six, they get a field goal, they get another field goal, and they get a 34-yard touchdown run from Stevenson, who had a monster game. So they go from down 17-3 to up 24-17 with under 3.5 minutes left in the game. Raiders come down, get a touchdown, a 30-yard touchdown pass, which was questionable because they called it a touchdown on the field. All the replay angles looked like he was out of bounds. I saw a picture from after the game that showed that he was inbound still, but obviously you don't have that picture when you're doing the replay review in just the minute after you obviously challenge or it's being looked at. But all the replay angles, he definitely looked out of bounds. I guess it just wasn't conclusive enough to overturn it, but no matter the fact, it was a touchdown, 24-24 tie game. So it's a tie game. That touchdown happened with 30 seconds left. Patriots have, I believe they have all 3 timeouts, or at least 2 of them. I could see exactly how many timeouts they had, but again, tie game. They just got a crazy touchdown with 30 seconds left. They had 2 timeouts, the Patriots. So they get an 8-yard pass. So they're 33-yard line, call timeout, 25 seconds left. Incomplete pass, Stevenson up the middle for 12 yards. Now you're at your 45-yard line, 14 seconds left. First down. They go incompletion. Then they go incompletion again. So now there's 5 seconds left or something like that. Or 2, I think it was 2 seconds left, something like that. You have no timeouts. You're only 55 yards away, and this was asked after the game why they did not throw a Hail Mary, because they didn't throw a Hail Mary. And they said they couldn't reach the end zone with Mac Jones throwing the ball. One, that's concerning because an NFL quarterback should be able to throw the ball 55 yards. Or at least you try it. I mean, even if he does come up short, you at least tried it. And whatever, if they do catch it, there's 1,000 people in the end zone and they're at the 5-yard line anyways. If the other team were to intercept it, but you at least try it. Who knows? Maybe it gets tipped. We've seen plays where people will try and bat it down. You catch it, they tip it up in the air, it bounces to someone in the back of the end zone. Who knows? But I mean, I don't know if that's true. I think Mac Jones probably can throw a football 55 yards, but the fact that they didn't trust him to do that, it's a little weird in my opinion. You do have Bailey Zappi as a backup. I can assume he can throw the ball 55 yards. You could have just thrown him in there to at least try it. I mean, again, it's not like you're at your 30-yard line where it's like clearly there's no chance of you throwing a Hail Mary, but you're basically at midfield. I mean, that's like prime position to throw a Hail Mary in. So very weird and odd situation, but they decided to go with a draw play. just to see. They even said after the game it was just a normal draw play, just to see what could happen. Stevenson actually gets 23 yards on the play, breaks a couple tackles. Actually, never had a lane because there were guys in front of him, but he did break tackles and actually get yards on it. But he first laterals it to Jacoby Myers. And maybe this was the problem, is that it was just supposed to be a draw play. Again, it's a tie game, no time on the clock. If the worst thing that could happen is that you go to OT and you see what happens. He first laterals it to Jacoby Myers. And again, that could have been the start of the problem, because if he just went down, you go down OT. Myers gets the lateral, runs backwards, and then everyone's chasing after him, and he just trucks it to Mac Jones, who's the only guy left from where the original line of scrimmage was. He's kind of just standing there, to be honest. And he chucks it to him, not seeing Chandler Jones, who I've been making fun of this entire season, and I'm still not counting this as a win for him. He didn't do anything, but he just throws it right to Chandler Jones, and it's only Mac Jones in front of him. Again, there's no time on the clock. It's only Mac Jones. Mac Jones is the only Patriot who's even 10 yards close to him. Chandler Jones catches it, stiff arms Mac Jones. Even if Mac Jones were to somehow try and tackle him, there was probably 3 Raiders right behind Chandler Jones, so he could have lateraled it to one of them, and they probably would have scored. But he stiff arms Mac Jones right to the ground, runs right over him, and runs for the touchdown. No time left. Touchdown for the win. I've never seen that happen before in my life. You see laterals, but usually it's when the team is losing. You're trying laterals. Maybe they'll return it for a touchdown, but obviously, the team that's defending in that situation is already up by 5 points or whatever it is. So it doesn't matter. It's not like that won them the game. They're already winning, but this was a situation where it's a tie game. All you got to do is just go down. You go to OT, and if you win the coin toss, you get heads, or you call heads. I'm a big heads guy. You win the coin toss, you get the ball first, you go down, you score a touchdown, the game's over. But never seen a loss like that. It was a huge loss because the Patriots could have went to 8-6. The Jets had lost this week. The Chargers did win, but with the Jets lost, that would have been a huge win for the Patriots to go to 8-6. The Raiders, I guess, are technically still in it. They're really not, but they think they are. They'd won last week against the Rams, and they're 7-7. I'd give them more credit. But with that loss last week to the Rams, I don't care what happens. They're not in it. But just the Patriots probably went from, if they were to win that game, most likely making the playoffs. Maybe it'd come down to the last week. Probably would. But the Jets are most likely out of it with the way that their offense is playing. The Patriots definitely would have had a chance with the Chargers. Now, I don't think the Patriots can make the playoffs. I don't think their team's good enough anyways. I think that with them just being 2 games over 500, they'd have a better chance. But they play the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Bills this week. That's really tough. I mean, maybe that Bills game might not mean anything. We kind of talked about that earlier. But at the same time, it might mean the number 1 seed for the Bills. So you hope that the Bills have that locked up before then, because then that game won't mean anything for the Bills, and you could not auto win it, but definitely a better chance of winning that game. And then Bengals, Dolphins at home, but those are 2 really tough teams. So they're probably not going to make the playoffs at this point. And again, it's something watching it live, I didn't even know what to say. My mouth was open. I'd never seen that. I'd never seen that before, where they basically picked off the lateral and ran it back for a touchdown to win the game. So that's that. I mean, we saw, again, the 33-point comeback was crazy on Saturday, but that was crazier. It's got to be the worst way to lose a game. I mean, it has to be. So that happened. Talk about some of the other games here. Get games that kind of matter. Like I said, the Panthers lost to the Steelers 24-16. That was a big loss because the Bucs lost. Panthers are at home against the Steelers. That's a game that's not, you should win, but it's definitely winnable. It's definitely there. And that's a really tough loss for them because they could have caught up a game. They could have been tied with the Bucs now with that matchup looming in a week. So that would have been a big game to get, but they didn't. A lot of these other games are just teams that are kind of out of it and who really cares. Like, Cardinals, Broncos. The Broncos won, but who cares? Saints, Falcons. The Saints won. Again, that at least helps them with possibly winning that division, but it's still a pretty long shot for them. Chargers, Titans was a big one. Chargers win 17-14. Titans just I don't know what happened with the Titans. I mean, I guess they were somewhat flawed even when they were winning games, but these last 3 weeks have been possibly three of the worst games played by a team that had a winning record at the time. Now they're 500. I mean, they can't move the ball. Their defense. I mean, I guess they only let up 17 points this game. It came down to a game-winning field goal, but their defense really isn't doing anything. It's just I don't know what's going on with Tennessee. The Jaguars are now a game in the win column back. Jaguars are 6-8. Titans obviously are 7-7, and they play each other the last week of the season. That could, like I said, I've been saying it for the last week or two. That could be a game for the division. I think that's way more possible now that that game is for the division, and the Jaguars are playing way better football. Lawrence is really hitting a next stride. He's really put himself in another tier in terms of where he's at in his progression in his NFL career. He's been phenomenal these last month of games. And the Titans are just on the downhill. They're declining, and the Jaguars are trending upwards. So that's going to be something to look out for. Like I said, the Chargers, they're now 8-6. That was a huge win for them. They are now the 6th seed, because again, Miami is the 7th seed because they beat Miami, which was a huge win now looking at it, because that could get them that 6th seed. You can avoid Kansas City or Buffalo, but you're probably running into Cincinnati, which is tough, but you got to play one of those three teams. I wouldn't say you'd rather play Cincinnati, but just in terms of the pedigree and what the Chiefs have done in the playoffs, you'd probably not rather play them. Cincinnati definitely isn't easy, but I think that might be the team you want to play out of those three. Not like you really do want to play them, but if you had to choose one, I think you'd pick Cincinnati. So big win for them. Washington, they lose to the Giants Sunday Night Football, 20-12. Didn't really matter that much because, obviously you'd like to win that game, but they're still in the playoffs technically. They just flip flop. Giants is 6th seed. Washington's not the 7th seed, but they're going to have to fight with Detroit. I mean, again, Detroit's 7-7. That tie for Washington, I guess, helps now because they possibly, if they did lose that game, that means they would be 7-7. But they're at least they at least have to fight with Detroit. And Detroit's playing better football than Washington right now. So definitely a little concerning. Washington, they play the Niners this week. That's probably a loss. Then they play the Browns, which is going to be a close game. I think they're both kind of even teams, to be honest. I think Washington might be a little bit better, but it's pretty even. Then they play the Cowboys in the last week, which that game might not mean anything, so they could get helped out there, but we'll have to see. And then last night, Monday Night Football. Again, two teams, doesn't matter, really. Packers beat the Rams. Rams are now eliminated from the playoffs. We all expected that anyways. Packers go to 6-8, though. They're technically still in it. They have to win out, and they need a lot of help. But do you really believe in the Packers to, one, win out, and then two, if they do win out, all these other teams really going to fail that much and lose all these games? I don't really think so. But, yeah, that is what happened. So that's it for Week 15. That was the recap. Just the other game was Ravens-Browns. Browns beat the Ravens. That's why the Ravens lose first place in the AFC North. Bengals move into first place, which we all expected to happen anyways. And the Ravens are now, I think, the 5 seed. Yeah, we'll see if the Ravens make the playoffs. I could see them losing the rest of their games, to be honest. I don't think it will happen, but that's just the way that they're playing. I know Lamar hasn't played these last 2 games, but even when Lamar was playing, it's not like they were playing good football anyways. So we'll see what happens with the Ravens. But that's it for this week. Definitely check out the other videos that are coming out this week. You'll see the Cowboys video. I'll just say it, they lost to the Jaguars 40-34 in OT, but see more if you want a detailed, all-inclusive look at that game. It'll be the video after this, and then the preview video for Week 16 will be at the end of this week, which you can obviously watch on this channel. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.